There's a battle being waged in this ancient, most spiritual of cities, a land battle which many fear may one day soon become the trigger for a new Middle East war. Mrs. Wadad Shabani is an Arab living in Silwan. It's in East Jerusalem, just outside the old city walls. Armed guards are on duty around her gate, but they're not there to protect her, but to guard her Jewish neighbours, installed by a right-wing settler group determined to turn Arab Silwan into a Jewish neighbourhood.
You know, here is the picture of my son.
Her son was murdered by a Jewish youth, a robbery.
On the 83.
Nonetheless, she's nothing against sharing her courtyard or her neighbourhood with Jews. What she finds unacceptable is the organised takeover of Arab land by people she calls Jewish fundamentalists.
People used to live, everybody together in 48. You know, Jewish and Palestinian people used to live all together in Jaffa, in Haifa, in Tel Aviv, in everywhere. But the reason is we don't want settlers. We don't accept any settlers.
And now you're living next door to some.
It's not our, we can't do anything, you know. They have guns, they have everything, but we have nothing with what we want to fight with them.
She takes me to her rooftop to introduce me to the owner of her house, Mrs. Fathi Kareen. Mrs. Kareen says she also owned the room next door. 5 years ago, though, a settlers group paid her tenant to leave, broke in through a skylight in the dead of night, took possession of the room and then built onto it.
نزلوا من هون كسروا الشباك ونزلوا على البيت تحت على هذا كان اللي فيه هذه الدار اللي كان في البيت ساكن هون المستاجر مني أنا كان بتعاطى بتشم لأنه بتعاطى مش صاحي عن الدنيا بعدين أخذها وطلع هم استلموا الدار هذاك راح هو استلم الدار هون أنا طلعوا علي أنا أطلعوني من بيتي.
Even though she'd lived there all her life, the Israeli court said Mrs. Kareen, like many Palestinians, couldn't prove she owned the land to start with. The group that took the house then gave it to Galit Maoz, her husband, and their children. To them, like other settlers, Silwan's importance is in its past. As the site of King David's vanished city, it's a land that was and always will be destined for the Jews.
I am a religious woman, and I believe that God gave it to us.
And what about the people who lived here?
They can live here. I don't say that they have to go, but it's ours.
Every year, the festival of Passover is followed by Mimona. For Jews of Moroccan ancestry, it's a time to celebrate. Jerusalem's mayor, Ehud Olmert, has a politician's touch with his constituency. But the municipality of Jerusalem has changed, for since 1967, Israel's done everything it could to turn Jerusalem into a Jewish city. It's a deliberate policy, and one spearheaded in part by Mayor Olmert.
Jerusalem was originally capital, declared by King David. This is not a fiction, this is an historical fact. Jerusalem never was anything but the capital of the Jewish people, and the fact that there are national minorities in the city doesn't mean that it has to be split politically. It only means that everyone who lives in the city is entitled to live on an equal basis.
This current Israeli government's mindset, mentality, ideology, as well as the mayor of Jerusalem, are really out of step with the language of accommodation, of harmony, of peace. And I think that the more intransigent they are about Jerusalem, the more they wish to dictate their own ideology on Jerusalem and to insist that the illegal realities they have created are absolute and eternal. The more they destroy the chances of actually transforming Jerusalem into becoming a real city of peace.
Mrs. Shabani doesn't do her shopping in Silwan, but in the Muslim quarter inside Jerusalem's old city walls, an area that's the cultural and religious heartland of the ancient Arab presence. But even here, that presence is being eroded.
This roof belongs for me.
Hussam Jweihan has always lived in the Muslim quarter, and he's keen for me to see that above these streets are subtle battles being waged for every roof and room.
That's Arab, Jewish, and down. Arab, Jewish.
Okay.
Hussam, his brother Issam, and their family refuse to sell their land to Jewish settlers buying up the properties around, and they refuse to be pushed out by any other means.
But some Palestinians do sell their houses, don't they?
They do it. It's not like this. How they are very clever. I mean, the settlers. They have they work how to have houses. They don't go directly to the people. They send, one of the Shin Beit, Arab. He work with them, and he come to the family. He ask if they want to rent. If yes, so he rent from them, and then he give it to the settlers. This is always they do it like this.
Hussam feels increasingly besieged. Even on his roof, there's an armed Israeli guard whose job it is to watch them.
Please, don't pop, okay? Why not? This is private property, I'm sorry.
No, this is private.
Yes, but this part
No,
is...
this is private area. אוקיי, אני לא רוצה שיצלם פה.
אבל אני מצלם מה ששייך לי.
אני לא רוצה שיצלם את העמדה. אתה יודע שזה אסור לנו, עזוב.
אבל איזה עמדה? הם מצלמים מה ששייך לי, נכון?
תקשיב.
Well, we'd like to ask you a question if we can. What's the purpose of this little shelter on your roof?
I can't answer.
Well, what is it doing here? What do you do here? What's your job?
We don't want to answer. We want our capital. That means the old city and the village around. What they do now, they want that all Jerusalem and the village around to be with them. And this is what they think that they will successful, and they will never successful on this.
The group leading this takeover in the Muslim quarter is the Ataret Kohanim, an organization that operates from this office and another undisclosed address. It's had significant success, establishing some 60 Jewish families, even a religious college, and all of this inside the Muslim quarter. Its director, Yossi Baumel, says he's simply reclaiming land lost to Jews in the riots of 1929, when hundreds died on both sides.
This area was rendered Judenrein after a conversation, the last stages, a conversation between Hitler and the Mufti Husseini of Jerusalem. The Holocaust that killed my grandparents, the same Holocaust that killed my grandparents in Europe, chased and killed the Jews here in the streets of the Muslim quarter. And therefore, we don't feel that we should allow that lie to remain the political truths of our century. We don't feel that people should be able to refer to Palestinian East Jerusalem when it was stolen from us not 2,000 years ago, but 60, 70 years ago.
You could dismiss these views as those of a fanatical minority, fueling a similar extremism on the Muslim side, if it weren't for some uncomfortable realities in the past few years. Har Homa, being constructed on a hillside Arabs know as Jebel Abu Khnaim, is not the first, but the 9th in a series of Jewish neighborhoods, built massively around East Jerusalem since 1967. These suburbs, intended as a buffer against a future Palestinian state, were heavily subsidized by central government and built almost entirely on expropriated Arab land. By continuing the process today, Palestinians believe the Israeli government violates the spirit of the agreements reached at Oslo.
Now that we have entered the peace process, the Israeli violations have become much more sinister, because they are not just might makes right and the rule of power and force, but it is in direct defiance and contravention of agreements and of the peace process.
Where is it said, did we change the status quo of Jerusalem?
Do you say that nothing has changed in Jerusalem over the past few years?
No, that is not what Oslo says. Oslo says that we are not supposed to change the status quo in Jerusalem. Now, the status quo in Jerusalem prior to Oslo was that we built everywhere, and therefore we are not changing any status quo but continuing to build. It has been part of the status quo, it has been part of the practice which was exercised in the last 30 years. There is no change in it. According to the official interpretation, and this has been verified even by Arab spokesmen, building in Jerusalem is not in violation of the Oslo Agreement. And it will continue, I can promise you.
Jerusalem has changed dramatically since '67, and Israeli architect Zev Boran has come up with a map which both sides broadly accept as accurate. It shows that in the last 30 years, Arab areas, in yellow, have been gradually surrounded by the new Jewish neighborhoods in purple.
Now it was already...
But while the governments encourage the growth of Jewish neighborhoods, Palestinians claim that all new Arab housing is being restricted to Jerusalem's periphery, so that Jews retain control of the areas Israel really wants, the Old City and the center of East Jerusalem. They also claim they're the victims of a war fought with zoning laws and building permits to keep them out. When expansion of Jewish settlements is not deliberate, it's arbitrary. Izia al-Khatib and her family have lived in the village of Hizmeh all their lives. Their West Bank orange ID cards prove they live outside Jerusalem. Or so they thought. Until one day when they were told the city's borders had apparently moved forward overnight. Their house was now in Jerusalem, and because it had been built without a permit, they were ordered to demolish it.
يعني بس في شيء كهرباء وفي شيء بلاط. بنا جوزي توفى ما قدرت اكمل عليه. حكوا لي ان البيت هذا كل 5 سنين هذا البيت جديد. حكيت لهم ان هذا البيت عتيق يعني بنا جوزي ما قدرت اكمل عليه. قالوا هذا البيت جديد.
On the day we were filming, their lawyer arrived to explain the Israeli authorities had finally relented. But it's not a permit, only permission to apply for one.
But what I think is the result of this is that they are afraid to destroy your house. So you don't have a permit, your house is illegal, but they will not destroy it, at least not now. And they will give us time, it doesn't matter how long, to try and get a permit. Can I please see your ID?
Linda Breyer's seen hundreds of cases like this.
The problem. If we look behind us, that is stolen land, that is land confiscated from Palestinian owners, and this is being transferred to Jewish contractors to be built for Jewish people who will buy the apartments. Nothing is held back when it comes to planning for Jewish neighborhoods. It is an international law, totally illegal, and one could actually say it is a war crime because it is forbidden by the laws of war. What has happened is forbidden.
It's our land, says Mrs. Al-Khatib, here and here, but what can we do? Their house need not be knocked down straight away, but others are not so lucky. A house is being destroyed in Mrs. Shabani's neighborhood. Her friend Miriam Al-Bana had built a few rooms onto her family home on her own land, but without a permit, because she had been told that Palestinians would never get a permit for building in Silwan, unlike the Jewish settlers. The Israeli courts were due to hear the family's appeal that very morning, but the soldiers would not wait.
Is that fair? Is that fair? It's not fair at all. What's kind of it's government? This is not good government. This is not good government.
No permission, nothing. They build, they do whatever they like. You know, Israel is occupied us for 30 years. 30 years, no one lessons, no one permission to build. What are our children going to do here? You understand? I have 7 children. Where I want to live?
Fuck you!
Half an hour later, relatives returned with a temporary injunction to stop the demolition taking place. But by then, 3 rooms had been destroyed. And with them went something else. To Arab residents like these, a sense of trust that one day Jerusalem might be a city they could share with Jews in peace.